All right, everyone. Welcome to Reality Check. It is our Wednesday midday edition here on the home of Black Talk Media. It is WURD. We are on live at 96.1 FM, 900 AM in Philly proper. And it is wordradio.com. Once you go beyond the greater Philly, Delaware Valley area, we are wordradio.com on our very robust live stream throughout the nation, throughout the world, and also WURD TV, WURD app. You can find us on WURD TV at youtube.com/onWURD, facebook.com/forward as well. And we have the Facebook live stream. People can leave comments in there in our Facebook live stream where you're watching us right now live on WURD TV and WURD app on your smartphone or tablet device too. I'm Charles Ellison. I'm your host, executive producer, creator of Reality Check, your daily dose of politics and public policy, public affairs here on WURD between Philadelphia and Washington, D.C. And you can catch me on twitter.com at Ellison Report for more insights there. We'll keep hashtag word on politics going for the duration, even after the election, because there's still, politics never sleeps. So there's still a lot to cover, a lot to go through and unpack. At the top of the show, joining us this Wednesday, this soggy Wednesday morning, is Sojourner Ahebe. She is you've been listening to her, you've been listening to some of her reporting and also seeing some of her videos on social media and listening to some of her vignettes here on WURD. She is the Vote Beat reporter for WURD. She's been covering the elections, more specifically in Philadelphia, on the ground, doing some amazing work. So go to @Sojourner Ahebe on Twitter, on twitter.com. That's AHEBEE. And she also votebeat.org for more information on VoteBeat. And she joins us by Skype from Philly here today on Reality Check. Sojourner, how are you doing? Oh, we can't hear you. Oh, got you on mute. There we go.
Good morning. It's good to be here.
Excellent. No, it's good morning to you. Good morning to you. Also, if you have any questions for Sojourner, we're going to get a lay of the land or get a sense of how voters behaved during the elections in Philadelphia, primarily in Philadelphia, looking at, what voter turnout was, any issues. We had you on last week talking a little bit about this. There was also a very significant ballot question that was approved that we need to talk a little bit about. So if you have questions for Sojourner about how that election went, because we're still kind of unpacking it and breaking it down, ballots are still being counted. There's still a few ballots to go. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. So Sojourner, I had the opportunity to talk with Philadelphia City Commissioner Lisa Dealey yesterday. What did we learn about how election administration is going in Philadelphia? Obviously, a lot of changes, a lot of new innovations. The city commissioner's office had to be a bit creative here, and they had to do this within a very rapid fashion. So what did we learn about just how those practices went, how if they were able to establish kind of a new method, a new rhythm for future elections?
Yeah, this was a really unprecedented year for elections, in large part due to the pandemic, and as a result of the pandemic, a lot more voters choosing to vote by mail. So in Pennsylvania, by law, Pennsylvania was actually not allowed to start counting votes until 7 a.m. on election day. And that sort of is different from a lot of other states that got like either weeks or even days in advance to start that process. Pennsylvania didn't. And they tried to petition for it, but the Republican legislator was not here for it. And essentially that wasn't able to get done. And so that's had a huge impact on what the city commissioners have been able, on capacity. They've had to invest a lot more money and funds and the kind of staff that is capable of getting through all of these mail-in ballots in a reasonable amount of time. But regardless of that, actually, there's been very few hiccups, contrary to all of these claims from the Trump campaign and a lot of Republicans, Republican leaders in Pennsylvania. There's really no demonstrated there's no demonstrated evidence of voter fraud or anything going wrong, or people voting illegally. Everything is very foolproof, and we can get into a little bit of like how they actually ensure you are who you are, and how they count ballots within the convention center. But it's a very foolproof process, and what I've heard from the city commissioners and their PR people over there is that everything's going as planned.
I asked Commissioner Dealey this question. Wanted to get your thoughts or perspective on it, or what you're hearing. Are there things they could have done better?
I think the big one is really wanting to be able to have started earlier. There were so many states, I mean, even if we look at states like Florida, that actually got a few days ahead of time to begin that process. Right. It makes a huge difference. And that's not even the like mail counting process. That's actually something they refer to as pre-canvassing. So this is all the things that involve like looking at the declaration on the envelope, making sure the signature and everything is sound. This is a whole process that happens before you're even getting to the scanners. That's all done by hand here in Pennsylvania. So it's very labor intensive, and it requires a lot of time and a huge amount of people to get it done in a reasonable amount of time. So the fact that we weren't able to start until election day was a huge impediment.
Yeah, you know, those voter machines too. I know folks still had some issues with those. How significant were those issues? And this is not at all, you know, in this question to suggest that there was, you know, a level of improprieties or a level of glitches to have folks concerned to start filing lawsuits. But that was a question that kept coming up in the weeks heading up, the months really heading up to the election since the primary. A lot of people still felt that they weren't literate enough in those voting machines. So, you know, are people going to, or folks in the city commissioner's office and elsewhere, are they reevaluating those machines, or at least how they train poll workers and also residents on those machines?
Right. Yeah, that's a really great question. I actually spoke to one of the city commissioners, like spokesperson, like the day before election day, and we were having this conversation about voting machines. The city of Philadelphia has actually invested a lot of money in new machines. So the vast majority of machines that people would have been using on election day were sort of like top notch. And a lot of the problems that we were seeing happening on election day, like actually wasn't a result of the machines themselves, but more so about like human error. So I think that's definitely more of like a training issue. Some of the places I visited, Overbrook High School, and then a location in West Powelton on election day, both of which had glitches with machines at one point. Both of those locations had machines go down. But what I heard from both of the people at those locations is that the city commissioner's office was really quick about responding and getting out there. So that seems to be, that seems to be a positive.
Yeah, no, that does sound like that. We're talking with Sojourner Ahebe. She is Vote Beat reporter for WURD. Go to @Sojourner Ahebe on social media, on Twitter. Keep track of what she's up to, or @onWURD, of course, still engaged in some reporting on the ground and giving us sort of a post-mortem analysis of what happened in Philly during the election. If you have any questions or if you have any comments or if you'd like to give Sojourner a tip, maybe there's something she didn't see, you know, that we didn't see here at WURD in those days leading up to and on the day of the election, of the 2020 election. 215-634-8065, toll free. It is 866-361-0900. Can we break down the more specific, granular racial and community demographic data in terms of turnout in Philadelphia? Because I saw like about 9 different wards where the turnout rate was below 50%. The citywide turnout rate is now like about 63, 64%. Right. But overall, when you look at those 9 wards, I think there's still some concern there when you're under 50%. And those are majority black wards for the most part that we saw. Right. Talk about what you've seen in terms of the racial community demographic breakdowns.
Right. I'm in conversation with a lot of lawyers at the ACLU right now who are actually tracking that data. So a lot of it isn't largely available. AP has done a lot of interesting exit polls where they're giving us more of a national picture in terms of racial demographic turnout. We know that one of the reasons why Philadelphia was such a critical place for Joe Biden within Pennsylvania is because of there is such a huge Black population, segment of the population here that is obviously a huge part of the Democratic base. But you're right in noticing that turnout for people across the city, even regardless of race, seemed to be a little lower than the previous election when we're looking at the way people came out in 2016, which is actually a surprise to me because even on election day, I had anticipated the lines to not be as long because I thought most people would have been opting to vote by mail, but it seemed like the energy and the capacity was like really high on election day, at least the places that I visited at the times that I did. Yeah. So it's interesting to see the numbers. Obviously, they're still coming. There's still a little bit left, but we'll see.
Got it. So do we feel like, okay, well, it was just maybe because of mail-in ballots, but I mean, what's being counted is combined mail-in ballots and also on election day. Right. So I guess it was, one reason for why things went as smoothly as they did on November 3rd is thank goodness for early voting. Mail-in ballots for like weeks, months leading up to the general election, or about a month, so yeah, so that kind of spread things out.
Certainly. Yeah, no, for sure. We have the satellite centers here in Philadelphia, the drop boxes. There were just so many ways that you could vote early. So yeah, that definitely had an impact on who came out.
Yeah. As far as what are like various advocates and activists saying in terms of, because people were looking at how a lot of that protest social justice energy would be translated into the vote later on. How did that work out? Because Philadelphia was dealing with a lot of things between the impact of the pandemic, a lot of high unemployment, poverty increase is already a very economically distressed city, higher food insecurity, then the George Floyd protests, then protests over Breonna Taylor, over Jacob Flake, then the protests and the days of unrest over Walter Wallace Jr. So were you able to have any conversations with activists or advocates about how that energy might have been channeled into actual voter performance? Was it pivotal in that, in pushing it, or was it not?
It's interesting. I think the way I'll answer that question, I think it's actually on the other side. I've seen a renewed energy around, or I won't say even renewed, but like more of an attention to keeping these issues and the people that take care of them accountable after the election. I think what's different about the way everyone is sort of, navigating this moment post-election versus like the Obama election and then this one is that we have this living memory of what it was to live 4 years under a Trump presidency. So there's not that immediate sense of relief of, oh yeah, like the Democrats have won and we're good. There's a lived memory and a real fear about what could come next if we don't keep our elected officials accountable. And so in terms of, organizations that I've talked to, I'm thinking of like people like Reclaim Philly. We're doing a lot of great work right now around the new police contracts that are happening, trying to get community members involved to come to the public meetings. We'll talk, briefly about the ballot question regarding, Walter Wallace, but the energy seems to be around like there's work to be done and less of, oh, this is it. We voted and we don't have to do anything else.
Did that protest energy, do we feel like, okay, like because of a lot of those protests, a lot of the social justice movements that were going on, did it add more voters to the table? Was it negligible? Did we notice anything?
Certainly. I actually, on election day, I was in Cobbs Creek in Walter Wallace Jr.'s neighborhood and talked to local Cobbs Creek residents there. And what a lot of them told me, what was so interesting about some of the conversations I had with people coming in to vote, was that some of these people actually had opted in to mail in, long before election day arrived.
Got it.
Then when the, shooting happened and ensued, they actually came in on election day to void their mail-in because they wanted to vote in person on the machine because they felt it would have more of an immediate impact. So there was definitely more of an awareness of what their vote meant and the value of their vote, on that day.
Let's talk about that ballot question too. There was a ballot question on police reform, and that was approved in terms of holding the Philadelphia Police Department more accountable. How did that play out in terms of that? Was that also something that was, wasn't just about the presidential election, at least for Philadelphia? It was about a number of other issues, and people also venting a bit on local issues like police violence or
Right.
police brutality, issues like the shooting, the killing of Walter Wallace Jr. How did that play out, you think?
Certainly. I think there were, as we were seeing throughout the summer and even obviously before that, but we had this sustained attention on acts of police brutality across the
Hmm.
country. So a lot of the rioting and the, protesting and that sort of activist energy that we saw here in Philadelphia, and at the start wasn't even immediately in response to things that were happening here, but to other people that we could recognize, happening here as well. And
Hmm.
then we had that compounded. So thinking about people like Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and then we had Walter Wallace, and it was like, wow, okay, like this hit home. And so I think most certainly that had an impact on sort of pushing, folks in Philadelphia to rethink what police oversight can actually look like.
Hmm.
The Police Advisory Commission, which is what it was called in its prior form, has been around for a really long time, but critics have often said that they lack power. They can't request, documents. They're not the primary investigator.
Yeah,
So if someone doesn't report directly through them, they actually don't get to see what's happening on the internal affairs side over at the police department.
exactly right.
Yeah, so there are a lot of issues, obviously, with that infrastructure. And now with the Walter Wallace Jr., I think it was sort of that last string kind of pushing them to be like, we need something to keep the.
It's going to be interesting to see how this, how that ballot question, now it's approved, what that
Mhm.
actually does in terms of the police accountability landscape, the reform landscape. But the Police Advisory Commission had already been in place for a couple of decades now.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
like,
right.
so this is like old wine in a new bottle right here.
Yes,
So well, how fresh will that wine be?
right,
We don't know. I mean, there's a lot of cobwebs already on the old wine because it was
sure.
already there, and trying to make this seem like, oh, there's this new fresh beginning on the horizon as far as police reform in Philly is a bit disingenuous. I
Right.
just coming from my perspective, I'm just kind of doing a little host prerogative here because there was already a commission. It just really wasn't. It was ineffective. It wasn't really doing
Yep.
anything. So it's going to be interesting to see. Okay, well, as they're sort of playing this game of political musical chairs on this issue, what
Mhm.
happens to the existing commission? How is it strengthened? What's this new thing going to look like? Was there any
Yeah.
awareness that there already was a commission in place for a number of
Yes.
years?
I think I think the ballot question was a little
It
the
felt
way it was
redundant.
worded was very confusing
It was
because
very confusing. Yeah.
I think a lot of people, well, I mean, I think this speaks to a lot of the issues Police Advisory Commission had because a lot of people didn't even know it existed, let alone that it had been around so long, and that the whole point of the question was that we were moving, transforming its form and its powers.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people I talked to outside of, even in Cobb's Creek, they didn't even weren't aware of the ballot question in the first place, and then when they came out, they told me they didn't know that PAC even existed and was a force like within
Wow.
Philadelphia. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting, and that's problematic too. When you think
Right.
about it. But and we've talked about that before in this program, and talked to the narrator of that current commission of the PAC,
Right.
and so and they not even really so sure of exactly like what their role, and they being sort of frustrated that they weren't
Right.
giving as much autonomy to and as much power to do the things that commission was created to do,
Right.
or was originally intended to do in the first place. We've been talking with Sojourner Ahebe. She is Vote Beat reporter for WURD, doing some wonderful work on the ground, getting a sense of how the Philly electorate behaved, looking at how election administration took place as well in Philadelphia. She's been talking to folks in City Hall and also at various polling locations. What's next for your reporting, Sojourner, too? I'm real curious about that.
Certainly. Right now, we're working on a story about poll watchers at the convention center and thinking
Mm,
about some of the legal battles that have recently ensued from the Trump campaign, sort of, leveraging these assaults against the city's election infrastructure and saying
yeah.
that it's fraudulent. So we're going to talk to people on the ground who were there on the day that Republicans claim they were shut out of ballot counting procedures and like
Mm.
weren't able to observe. We'll see
Was that the case, really, truly? I mean, there were.
no.
Yeah.
It was the presiding judge said that that was not the case and that you know, they were in their complete right to observe. They're not really there to serve a role. They're just there to watch. They're not ballot counters. They're not election workers. So it's kind of already ridiculous that they were wanting to even be that close in the first place. Originally, they were allowed to be 20 feet away, and then now they're, I believe, allowed to be like 6 feet.
6 feet, right.
Yes.
Right. And that's unprecedented anyway. You can't go in there touching the ballots.
Right, exactly.
The campaigns can't. They wanted to touch the ballot. Like, no, you can't do that. Like,
yeah, and we're like living through a global pandemic. Like, you can't just be very close to people right now.
Right, exactly. So this is another conversation. Let's continue. We'll have you back on. You know, get some updates from you. Sojourner Ahebe, vote be reported for WURD, joining us here on Reality Check. Sojourner, great work. Thanks again.
Thank you so much. Take care.
All right, you do. All right, let's take a break, and when we come back on the other side, we'll just open up phone lines and see what the reaction is, get your thoughts, your perspective, and what are those issues after the election? What are those issues that we need to hold folks accountable on after this election, and not just national issues, but local state issues as well? 215-634-8065, 215-634-8065, 866 361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
PECO has many ways to help you lower your energy usage and save money at home. Here's one. If your heating and cooling system is more than 20 years old, it may be time for your contractor to replace it with a high-efficiency Energy Star certified model. You'll get a rebate from PECO and save on your monthly electric bill. You'll find a list of new heating and cooling system rebates at peco.com/rebates. Or you can call 1-888-5-PECO-SAVE for all the details. Plus, find instant discounts on smart thermostats and more at peco.com/marketplace. There's free shipping on orders over $49.
COVID-19 impacted a lot of things this year, including regular vaccination appointments. Vaccines help protect you and everyone around you, especially during flu season. Schedule an appointment with your healthcare provider today to make sure you and your children are vaccinated. Vaccines keep us safe, and they work. Skip the flu this year. Get your vaccination today. Let's stay protected together. For more information, visit health.pa.gov, paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
This Veterans Day vignette is brought to you by Rivers Casino Philadelphia.
In recognition of Veterans Day, WURD Radio celebrates the Tuskegee Airmen, the first black aviators in the United States military. The Tuskegee Airmen trained at the Tuskegee Army Airfield in Alabama while facing racial segregation, discrimination, and the denial of fair pay in the armed forces and at home. When dispatched, they flew more than 15,000 units during World War II and earned more than 150 distinguished flying crosses, shattering doubts about their capabilities as black aviators. Their demonstration of excellence contributed to the integration of the United States Armed Forces. As we continue to fight for racial justice today, WURD Radio celebrates the Tuskegee Airmen and other black Americans who have served and continue to serve our country.
This Veterans Day vignette was brought to you by Rivers Casino Philadelphia. Go to betrivers.com to play now. Reality Check
with Charles Ellison
right now on WURD Radio
and WURDRadio.com.
All right, welcome back. 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900. Phone lines are open until the 11 o'clock hour at 215, and we'll go into another conversation. 215-634-8065. Toll free, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Phone lines are open. Looking at Facebook Live, good morning to you, Janet Rogers. Good morning. Good morning. Shirley J. Carter, good morning, back at you. Nasir Butler, good morning. Peace and blessings, back at you as well. Good morning and peace to Joey Dixon. Yes, happy Veterans Day, by the way, everyone. Happy Veterans Day. And also, you know, something of a somber and very reflective, it should always be a somber and reflective Veterans Day, because people, our veterans made some enormous sacrifices, still continue to do so. And so on those front lines, in those battlefields, in those theaters of war. So I apologize for that, not at the top of this midweek edition, not acknowledging Veterans Day at the onset. Normally, it's just, you know, the time, and you know, we're on pandemia time, and so it kind of throws you off a little bit. But please, hoping everyone is at least doing some reflection as much as they can and should on our veterans. We have veterans in our families who've made substantial sacrifices, and veterans who are still going through a lot of challenges as well. Can't forget, you know, our veterans who are going through challenges as far as you know, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, mental illness, homelessness, also all sorts of financial and economic challenges, even after they've made those sacrifices and served their country, and, you know, have lost limbs, have lost body parts, have lost peace of mind, and so have lost friends, have lost family. So we really do need to, you know, appreciate our veterans and just give some reflection. Whether we agree with the politics behind those battles or those wars or those conflicts, those geopolitical conflicts or not, we should definitely reflect on Veterans Day from a human perspective. So just want to send my my best wishes and my prayers and blessings to our veterans out there who may be listening in. 215-634-8065, toll free, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Rise and shine to you as well, Kasuhu Sarah. And good morning, Malcolm White, watching and listening from Westmount Erie. And Gary Bryant, good morning to you as well. They're on Facebook Live watching us on WURD TV. 215-634-8065, toll free, 866-361-0900. Let me go to Lady E out of Frankfurt, calling in for a Reality Check. Lady E, good morning.
Yes, good morning, Charles. I enjoy your program very much.
Thank you.
But I have a question for you. Yesterday, you gave us a list of the wards that weren't performing well during the election period. Could you give that list out again, the name of the wards that weren't doing well? All right, would you do that?
Sure, I can do that right now. These were wards that had under 50% turnout, and to me, under 50% turnout, particularly in an election like this, is problematic. So those were wards 7, 16, 19, 20, 33, 37, 43, and 47. Is that helpful, Lady E?
It is. Yes, it is, and I appreciate that very much. Continue the good source of information you give our community. It is so very helpful. I'm so very proud of you. So thank you. You have a blessed day.
All right, you do the same. Thank you so much, Lady E. Thanks for listening as well. So, and you know, thank you for being a part of the WURD family. We really appreciate that. I appreciate those. I always love hearing those. That people are at least receiving the information, they're absorbing it, that they need it. We'll do the best we can. You know, these 3 hours go fast. They really do. It surprises me every day how fast 3 hours go. And then it surprises me how I realize that there's a lot of information that we missed. So it's just, it really is touching to hear that people feel that they're still getting as much out of the information as they do. That surprises me. So sometimes I always love hearing that from folks like Lady E. Just to continue to tell us what, you know, if you have tips or if there's information or things that you need us to go into. I try the best that I can do to try to cover that. You know, we We do all we can do here at WURD. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Let me go to Cliff out of Connecticut, who's calling in for a reality check. Cliff, what's good?
Hey, Brother Charles, thanks for taking my call. Listen, I'm having difficulties getting a specific response to my question in Connecticut as well as North Carolina and in Pennsylvania. And my question is that, for example, there's 20 electors in the state of Pennsylvania. And at this point, I think it's real close. Correct me if I'm wrong. Has Biden won Pennsylvania at this point?
He has, yeah.
Okay, so now what they're going to do is, correct me if I'm wrong, they're going to certify these votes. And then in December, the electors would have to vote, correct?
No, the electors certify, like with their vote, they just make that vote formal on December 14th, and that's when the certification happens. And they submit that certification to the National Archives, I believe that is.
Right. So here's my point. If Pennsylvania is a winner-take-all, okay, and then you have these faithless electors, which I do believe that they exist, so I'm not making it up, they do exist. So my point is that, in my question, if 20 are obligated and they take an oath to vote for Biden, what is the specific consequences if they don't vote for Biden and they cast their vote for Trump? What happens to them specifically in terms of, do they get a fine? Do they get kicked off the board? What specifically happened to these electors that do not vote for the winner of the popular vote in their state?
It depends on the state law, and I mean, generally speaking, it hasn't been a very common occurrence where you've had a faithless elector. I don't think that that's going to happen in this particular case, Cliff, based on what we're saying. I mean, yeah, anything can happen. I don't think that that's something that we have to tremendously worry about, especially when you have the electoral college vote count, especially, right now, I think, what do we have? We have Joe Biden at 290, Trump at 217. We have North Carolina and Georgia remaining. Georgia has about 16 electoral votes. North Carolina has about 15. It may be where he'll get Georgia. Joe Biden may get Georgia. He's a little bit, or they're still kind of going through that count. If he gets Georgia, he'll get about 306. I mean, that's a really big distance between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. I'm not seeing any indication. I'm not hearing any indication. I'm talking to different folks, and they're not feeling like a faithless elector situation, a serious. I mean, it would have to be a lot of faithless electors to suddenly turn the election back over to Donald Trump.
But that's my point. The point is that, and I think Reverend Sharpton said the same thing, that we first have to we should eliminate the electoral college process. But then in the meantime, there should be some criminal prosecution if these faithful electors do not represent the popular vote.
There's that's the one thing. Yeah, they're not criminally prosecuted for that by their states. I mean, they are fined. I mean, in some states, they would face a fine. I don't have that list of states in front of me. Yeah.
And the fine can be $50, $100. But and I used this example before, and I'll end with this, like Van Jones down in Georgia. If you're familiar with that individual, that brother. He is a registered and a long-time Democrat, but this guy is advocating and supporting Trump to the utmost. And so my point is that do you think, Cliff?
But here's the other question, though. I was just thinking about, Cliff, real quick, and I'll let you finish your point, because I think it's an interesting question. I mean, do you think there's going to be a problem, though? I mean, the electors know that after that, what was that Supreme Court case back in, was that June or July, where the states can still require the electors to vote as a result of the state's popular vote. They have to follow the state's popular vote. So the electors already know, because of that Supreme Court, that Supreme Court ruling was fairly final, that even if they go faithless elector, the state can require them still. I mean, they could still pursue some kind of enforcement. Once again, it's not criminal, but they still have to do it. So I don't, the state could sue them. I mean, do they want to go through that as an elector? Do they want to, countersue? Do they want to spend that kind of money going to court and then trying to make it all the way up to the Supreme Court just because they were fake? Because states can require it according to the Supreme Court. Go ahead.
No, I went in with this. Is that, and again, I go back to Vernon Jones down in Georgia. That brother was so loyal to Trump, if he was a faithless, let me put it this way, if he was a elector down in Georgia as a Democrat, no question in my mind that he would change his vote from a Democrat. If in fact Georgia was won by Biden, he would change his vote and vote for Trump because of his commitment and his loyalty to Trump. That's just my opinion. And he would take the fine, whether it be $50 or a $100 fine. And that's why I said, what's the fine in each state, particularly in Pennsylvania, if a faithful or if an elector does not vote the popular vote? What's the fine?
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, it depends on the state. It really does depend on the state. I don't know. It is what is it in Philadelphia?
What is it in Pennsylvania? What's the fine?
I'm not sure what the fine is in Pennsylvania. Yeah, I'm not sure what the fine is like off the way. I was actually looking at while you were talking. Yeah, thanks so much, Cliff. I don't think it's something to worry about. I really don't. I think that it's just going to all be certified on December 14th. Let me go to the calls here. Sister Murray. Oh, let me go to a break, and then when we come back on the other side, we'll continue to take calls. 215-634-8065. Toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
This year's been tough, but it's given me a lot of time to learn new skills through the internet.
I've been joining more classes during lockdown.
I'm doing an internship.
I taught myself how to play guitar.
So when people ask,
will I be able to learn online?
I feel like I'm ready.
Internet Essentials from Comcast has connected millions of families from low-income homes to the internet. So no matter what back to school looks like, students can be ready for anything. Learn more at comcast.com/Internet Essentials.
Monday through Thursday, keep it locked to WURD Radio. At 6 a.m., start your day with the Power Hour, hosted by Bishop Dwayne Royster and Reverend Mark Kelly Tyler. At 7, it's Wake Up with WURD with Solomon Jones. At 10 a.m., it's Reality Check with Charles Ellison. Then at 1 p.m., it's The Source, hosted by Andrea Lawful Sanders on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and the Black Women's Leadership Council on Wednesdays. At 4 p.m., it's Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro. Then at 7, it's Save Space with Sincerely Sarita. At 9 p.m., round up your day with Keeping It Real with the Reverend Al Sharpton.
Keep your dial locked
to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Streaming live on WURDradio.com and the WURD Radio app.
Or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube. WURD Radio. Independent Black Media.
Reality Check
with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio
and WURDradio.com.
Yeah, that's a good question from Cliff. Right now, there are no penalties in Pennsylvania for faithless electors. There was a measure that was being proposed by State Representatives Kevin Boyle and also Malcolm Kenyatta to punish faithless electors with a fine of $1,000. So there was something. I'm not sure what happened to that, but right now there is no punishment. You do have about 33 states in the District of Columbia which do punish faithless electors. They have an assorted array of fines. In some places it's a very low nominal amount, and other places it's rather high. So, but not sure that we're gonna see that issue. Well, we'll see. We're keeping a close eye on it. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Sister Murray out of Northern Liberties is calling in for a reality check. Sister Murray?
Yes. Hi. Good morning, Charles. How are you?
Hey, good morning. How you doing?
I am doing wonderful, and I just wanted to say we won, and thank everybody at WURD for walking us through this horrible nightmare. Also, I would like to acknowledge the veterans. You have to give them their respect, fighting for us all around the world. Charles, but our work is not done because we need those seats, and we must send money to Georgia. We have to do this all around the world. We have to send money so that we can take over. And once we get into the Senate, then we can start to pick our way at what should not be in there so that we can save this world and turn it around. Charles, before I go, I have 3 questions I would like to ask you because, we're in a world that we need healing, right? All around the world, we need healing.
Yeah.
We have small businesses that have gone out of business, and some are on their way out of business. We haven't gotten a stimulus check to replenish our economy so that we don't go into a recession. We have people that are being evicted at astronomical rates, which is, Charles, this is going to be a lot of young people, too, that's going to be out in the street. Not so much like the elderly, but more so in the 20s and 30s and 40s. And this is happening all around the world. Also, how can small businesses, because they haven't gotten that PA COVID CARES 19 Act grant relief, they shut everything down before they started to do the second 119 relief. So how can small businesses stand when they can't get loans, when their business is on the way out? Their taxes for the businesses can't be paid, so they're struggling because they have to still try to keep their head above water. So these questions I leave with you. And again, I want to say support WURD because we need this radio station, number one, all around the world, and we must support it, and we must take over and get those seats. God bless you all, and we did this together. Together, we did it. We took it over, and we can continue to take it over and move forward. And I'm going to say one more thing before I go. God is going to use elect Biden and elect Kamala Harris as a vessel, because we can't look at man, but we have to go to God. He's going to use them to bring this country back on top and to put our kids back in school, to cure this virus, to put food on our tables, and to undo the unrest. God bless you. Amen.
Hey, no, thank you. Amen to you too, Sister Murray. So also don't forget, real quick before I go on to the next caller, it's sweatshirt season. And Sincerely Sarita's got you covered. So join her. I was on Sincerely Sarita last night too. We were talking about environmental justice issues. But join or renew your WURD membership and use Sarita's code SAVESPACE to get your free WURD sweatshirt today. It's valued normally at $35, but you get it free if you use the code SAVESPACE when you join or renew your WURD membership today. So if you are going to start a new WURD membership or you're renewing it, use the code SAVESPACE. You get a free WURD sweatshirt. So go to wurdradio.com/join now to take advantage of that. That's between now and September 16th. And let me go to Tyrone out of, and thank you for that, Sister Murray, as well. It's going to be interesting to see how that, and we're going to be keeping a close eye on that in Washington, D.C., how pandemic relief plays out. Now that the election is done. And no indications, no signs of any sort of pandemic relief package passing anytime soon after the election. So, we'll, particularly while there's no official transition has happened just yet, we may have to wait till after December 14th when everything is certified, when those electors are certified. I don't think there's going to be an issue based on all the indications I'm getting and how things play out. Republicans in Pennsylvania have said that, for what it's worth, but the Pennsylvania State Senate Majority Leader, Jay Corman, has said that Republicans are going to honor the wishes of the voters. So that includes the electoral vote. So, it's the governor of the state, Governor Wolf, appoints the electors. The vote is certified by the state or the Commonwealth of PA, and the Governor Wolf, appoints the electors. And so State Senate Majority Leader Jay Corman has said that they will follow the law on that. So it depends on the state. Different states operate differently. So, we'll keep an eye on it. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Let me go to Tyrone out of North Philly, calling in for a reality check. Tyrone?
Yes, peace and blessings, good brother. How are you today?
Hey, peace. How are you doing, sir? Good morning.
All right. And much love and respect to my WURD family. Man, before I get to my 2 points, I just want to thank you once again, Brother Charles. Man, you just have a way of creating enlightenment, even from stuff that folks are not even, aware of. Last night, brother, you were so much on point with Sister Sarita, and we just thank you, man, for your wisdom, brother, your knowledge, and you not mind sharing it. Even, when you with Al Sharpton, again, you always coming through, man, with some powerful stuff. And we just want to hold you up, brother, because you,
Appreciate
brother.
you.
That's
Yeah,
an
thank you.
outstanding brother. And you know, just
thank you.
two.
Thanks for listening
points.
too. Thanks for listening to that last night.
Yeah.
And I hope you get that book and read it as well. It's a good book. Harriet Washington, A Terrible Thing to Waste by Harriet Washington. Yeah, no, thank you for that.
Yes, indeed. Well, two things. One, first, giving honor to all the folks who have served this country. You know, my uncle, you know, he died at war serving this country. My good brother, you know, my main partner right now, Steve Waller, he works with the Wounded Warriors, and right now he's on a mission, you know, helping across the, across the country, helping those who have been wounded at war, and we appreciate the work that they do. And I'm going to give a shout out to my grandson, because I consider him a prisoner of war, because our young people right now in this country are and at war, even if they don't know it. Man, I mean, you're playing basketball, you know, two young brothers get shot on a basketball court. Our young people are at war and are in war, whether they know it or not. And, man, we have to do more and do something about it. But I just want to talk about this outgoing administration. I mean, they came in disrupting everything when they came in. And then when they was running things, they was disruptive, tearing this country apart. And now when they got to get out, they want to be disruptive, even leaving, even putting the security of this country, because the GSA won't, you know, let the Biden transitional team do what they must do in order to have a transition that would, again, move from one administration to the other. I just don't know how in the world we've got so many folks in this country keep standing behind a man that is constantly doing everything to tear this country apart, and he still have a following saying we don't care if this country get torn apart. So I'm just praying and thanking God that there is a God, that he is going to be pushed to the side and we can get on with the business of this country. So as always, brother, I appreciate you allowing me to share. And once again, I really want us to do what we can to help our young folks, you know, in this undeclared war that they're living through. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, there's people we got to go back to, because it looks like there was a brief reprieve in homicides in Philadelphia just for a couple of days, but the homicide rate is back at 40% more than where it was this time last year. We've got 427 homicides in Philadelphia so far. 427 homicides, so that's a record. We haven't seen that kind of homicide rate since the 90s. In Philadelphia, so since the 80s, 90s. And so, yeah, it's definitely a war out there. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. It's Prince out of Schuylkill calling in for a reality check. Prince?
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. What's happening? All right.
Good. It wasn't a brief reprieve. It just wasn't reported. And so there were a bunch of deaths that had gone on in the city of Philadelphia. And what we have is we have selective reporting. And so this bears the burden that we have to create an entity that deals with our community specifically, because you'll tell me 2 shootings in Chester, and then you'll shoot straight to Trent. And then you'll ignore those heinous shootings that had happened multiple times in my city, unless you want to put it on the next hour or the next half hour. And so we're being shortchanged. And we're dealing with this stress. They're trying to gradually work us through this stress opposed to fixing the problem. So you can't share what you want to selectively with us, Charles. You give it to us straight, and let's fix the problem. But the politicians have convinced the news media to, like, well, don't share all of it with them. Just share a little bit here, a little bit there. And some of the stuff they're being forced to share with us because it's on Facebook and it's on the internet before it's in the media house. And this is where they're running a little late, you know. And so, and once again, let me just be grateful for URD, because URD is putting people at the virtual table that normally wouldn't be considered at any other table. So those people in North Philly that get to call in and get to speak aren't invited to the simple meetings with the politicians. You see what I'm saying? Not the ones that are making the big decisions, but the ones where they need you to come out and participate and sign a sign-in sheet. You know, you can go to them meetings, you know, when they just need your population signature, but you can't go when they're making that important decision whether to conclude on having a stadium or not have the stadium, you know. And so we thank you guys again for URD for that very purpose right there. But at the end of the day, you know, the shootings on the basketball court, the gatherings that you do see out here with no mask on, the mere fact that any of us can go out and go to an event and go to a gathering and see people taking this pandemic, you know, like it doesn't even matter. And so how are you going to resolve that? And then my last question is, now that the presidential situation has been sort of resolved, I am so disturbed that Dwight Evans or Vincent Hughes and none of them guys, and I'm mentioning names, so worst thing that happens, they can call me. How come none of them are talking about the stimulus package going to the poor people who are still directly affected by not having any resources, and then you're contemplating shutting this city down once again, which doesn't have anything. And now, so the House, the Republicans aren't saying, we won't agree. Nancy Pelosi hadn't come and open her mouth not one bit about a stimulus package being approved at all. And so
but hey, Prince, let's set the record straight on that, though. I mean, Democrats had already passed a $3.2 trillion pandemic relief package back in May. I mean, that's not that the pox is really not so much on Democrats. I hear you. I agree with you on that part. As far as I think Democrats right now should start being vocal ASAP on getting pandemic relief passed. But that's a misconception there. Like this is not a both sides thing. Democrats had already passed a very robust, you know, and I'm not saying that in any kind of partisan way. I mean, it's just facts. And it's like, but think about it. I mean, the Senate, they were busy trying to rush through a Supreme Court nominee. That was like their prioritized business. They weren't trying to prioritize passing a stimulus relief, a $3.2 trillion stimulus relief package. Even like Democrats came back to the table to get it passed. They said, okay, we'll take it down to $2 trillion. Okay, we'll take it down to $1.5 trillion. The Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell did not want to do that. So let's just, if we're talking about being straight up, let's be straight up about that. Like, I mean, give credit where credit is due on that. They put together a muscular they wanted to put more, but they put it at $3.2 trillion. Republicans didn't want to have it. They were busy trying to get a Supreme Court nominee. So, I mean, do you want a Supreme Court nominee, or do you want to put money in people's pockets?
So let's be clear. Let's be clear, because you're trying to. There's no such thing as the Democrats pass something. It either passes with Republicans and Democrats, or it doesn't pass at all. So
it passed the House, but that's how it worked. But you know how it works, Prince. It passed the House, and then it went, and Republicans are in charge, and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, he literally let it sit on his desk. They did this back in May. We could have had it done in May, and then we could have had another package for follow-up. Right. So, I mean, you know, to put that on Democrats, to put that solely on Democrats, yeah, I mean, you know, Democrats could push harder, but at least they did that initial and big step. They got it out the House. Because it wasn't really a whole lot of the majority of Republicans didn't vote for that package. Yeah, you need Republicans too. Go ahead, finish your thought, Prince.
I'm gonna defer on that. I'm not even gonna carry that conversation any further, because what I am saying that is right now that should be primary. Right now that should be on the agenda, and we should get that done. And there's a thing that
tell Republicans to put it on to prioritize it.
Right, and one of the things, and this is my suggestion. Because in December, and this is statistical data, in December, there's more people during this holiday festive time who commit suicide than any other time of the year.
Yeah, you're right.
And so this is why I'm saying we have to give some relief. We have to make people a participant in this process, because the festive season, those people who don't have, those people who are far from having much, are going to be in a quandary or a bad place. And this is where most of us who have resources help.
But you know what? I'll say this too. I agree with you on that, Prince. I'll make this final thought, and I hope I don't come across as insensitive when I say this, because I understand that, and it's very tragic. The suicide rates do go up. It is a pandemic. People have got to behave accordingly during this pandemic. It's a hard time, and it's stressing us out. There's a psychological impact. There's the obvious public health impact. People are going to have to reset their expectations about the holidays. So I mean, yeah, the governments, state, local, federal, elected officials, policymakers, they're going to have to do what they have to do to protect us and also put money in our pockets, or to try to revive the economy as best as good as possible while keeping things shut down. That's probably the ideal model. But this is on us too. Like this is a both and. So we have to take some personal responsibility on, as far as how we're behaving and conducting ourselves in this pandemic. People still want a half mask. They still want their noses sticking out. They still want to go out to restaurants. I just saw a study yesterday where, it's actually, you're 4 times as likely to get infected in a restaurant as you are in a gym or a coffee shop. But people still want to go to restaurants. The restaurants still want to be open. People still want to go to bars. People still are going to want to gather as big families. They don't want to listen to basic public health guidance, and they still going to try. I'm getting calls from family. They want to get together, big family gatherings, 20, 25 people. It's like, excuse me, there's a pandemic going on. No, we staying home. Little small gathering. It's just going to be a few of us around a turkey. People need to take some personal responsibility here and adjust their schedules and their expectations about the holidays accordingly, and stop putting stress on themselves and putting stress on other family members. A lot of people are not going to have money in their pockets come Christmas, and that's and if we're in the middle of a pandemic, and that's just that's the way it is. And so let's come up with something else creative and not rely so much on a normal Thanksgiving or a normal Christmas and putting all that unnecessary pressure and stress on people. So I hope I don't come across as insensitive on that, but I think that's just common sense. It's like, let's be practical here, because you know what? People's lack of common sense and lack of pragmatism and practicality in a time like this is what's getting people sick and getting people killed. Let me take a break, and when we come back, I'm sorry, I took a little overtime there. I wasn't watching the clock. And John Brodsky is going to be coming up next to talk about decisions that people are, oh, no, I'm sorry. We're talking about the hurricane season, because the hurricane season is actually a little bit longer and record-breaking than initially anticipated or predicted. But we're going to have John Brodsky come on from Finder.com to talk about those findings. Up next here on Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Jefferson Health offers no-cost COVID-19 testing at St. Raymond of Pinafort Church. Testing is on Thursdays and Saturdays. For testing hours and more information, call 1-833-533-3463.
Jobs,
entrepreneurship opportunities, small business resources,
and financial literacy.
Livelihood. The new initiative from WURD Radio to connect Philadelphians to resources to help take the next steps in their professional lives. WordWorks.com features career readiness tools, entrepreneurship resources, funding opportunities, and events to expand your livelihood. Visit WURDworks.com right now and take the next step in your professional journey. Livelihood is supported by the Nightland Fest's Local News Transformation Fund, Borealis Philanthropies Racial Equity and Journalism Fund, and the Solutions Journalism Network.
Hi, this is Jeff Brown from Brown's Family ShopRites and Fresh Grocers. Are you thinking about a part-time job to help out with the cost of the holidays? We have plenty of openings. You can apply online at shoprite.com/careers or freshgrocer.com/careers. Come join the Brown family today and help us serve the people of Philadelphia. Have a great holiday.
To all caregivers and seniors, are you tired of the fake promises and looking for a home care agency that really cares about you and delivers on promise? Abington Caregivers, Inc. has a sign-on bonus for you. At Abington Caregivers, you come first. Call us today, 215-600-3434 for all your home care needs. We service Philadelphia, Bucks, and Montgomery County. Call 215-600-3434. Abington Cares.
A a new president.
Joe Biden and Kamala Harris pull ahead in Pennsylvania
And win the presidency.
We want to hear your reactions.
This is WURD Radio.
96.1 FM.
And 900 AM WURD Philadelphia.
Streaming live on WURDradio.com, the WURD Radio app, and watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube. WURD Radio. Independent Black Media.
Reality check.
With Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio.
And WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back. We're here on Reality Check. It is our midweek edition here on your daily dose of public affairs, politics, public policy, Reality Check. I'm at Ellison Report on Twitter.com if you'd like to catch me there. Also, we are streaming live on WURD TV, Facebook.com/4WURD, YouTube.com/onWURD, WURDradio.com for our robust live stream when we're going or listening beyond Greater Philly and Delaware Valley. We are throughout the nation, throughout the world at WURDradio.com. Joining me now is John Brodsky. He is joining me by Skype. He is CEO of Finder.com. Some great insights and analysis and data that's there at Finder.com. Something that caught my eye recently was about their latest report on hurricanes. This is a record hurricane season. And so Finder.com studied or analyzed those states which are hit most often by hurricanes. And so we brought on the Finder.com CEO to talk a little bit about those findings and maybe if there's any analysis, continued analysis in the future. John Brodsky joins us by Skype. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Charles. Thanks for having me here.
All right, good. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. So how is this hurricane season looking right now? So we actually got more hurricanes. This is a record season now. Just kind of give us a top-line overview of how that hurricane season is and how, what are we expecting? I mean, what sort of trend lines are you looking at or examining for the future?
Sure. So when we're looking at this, we're looking at what you see in the public eye, which is that this is the season with the most named storms ever. We're at 29 right now. We've got a few days left to go in the official hurricane season before it ends on November 30th. And yeah, it's been a bad season so far, for sure.
Wow.
And then there's the question of how much damage the storms are going to cause. We haven't seen a Katrina or Harvey level storm yet this year.
Yeah.
No. But it's certainly been a pretty bad season.
Right. We're expecting more hurricanes. I mean, the hurricane season hasn't officially ended yet, or at least in a meteorological sense, right? I mean, we could expect more hurricanes as we're heading throughout November. I mean, the way the trend lines are going, does it suggest we could be even experiencing hurricanes well into December?
I'm not a meteorologist, so I don't want to say that we're going to have hurricanes into December.
Right.
And I don't think the oceans and the atmosphere care that much about our trend lines in general. But certainly, the hurricane season doesn't end until November 30th. So, with 20 more days left to go.
Yeah.
Sure.
Wow.
Wow.
We could, and hopefully it won't be as devastating. But with all those collected together, aggregated, it's been rough. So let's talk about what you were looking at specifically. I think people are real curious about those states that are hit hardest by hurricanes. What are those states that we're looking at closely, and not just hit the hardest, but also where hurricane damage has been the most expensive?
Sure. So if you're looking at the places where you should never live if you don't want to see a hurricane, Florida. Florida's on top of the list.
Florida's at the top, right.
40% of the hurricanes that make landfall in Florida.
Wow.
And then 22% make landfall in Texas. And it really just batters Florida, the Gulf Coast, and right up to North Carolina is what you would expect to see. In terms of really big storms, since the 1850s, there's only been two Category 5s that have landed in Florida, one in Louisiana, one in Mississippi. Obviously, Louisiana, Mississippi one is Katrina. But quite a bit more Category 4 storms, which cause an awful lot of damage to property. They displace people. They flood huge amounts of areas. And again, you don't really want to be in Florida if you want to avoid that. They've had 11 of those 7 in Texas. And then it starts to fall off pretty precipitously. Where you are in Philly and where I am in New York, not that big of a deal in terms of the really, really big storms. You get down to the Category 3s and the Category 2s and the Category 1s.
But I did notice too on states like New York, Pennsylvania, or those those like Chesapeake Bay states, Mid-Atlantic states. I did notice like a few of those states were on that like top 20 list. So I mean, the hurricanes still kind of make their way up there as far as like like when we look at New York, for example, or Superstorm Sandy. Remember that? So I mean, some of those northeastern states, they may not be on that top 10 list or that top 5 list, but they're still kind of making it on that top 20 list.
Absolutely, and it's definitely no fun to live through a hurricane or even a tropical storm. Especially in a place like where we live in the Northeast and in the Mid-Atlantic, there's a lot of trees and there's a lot of above ground power lines, and there's a lot of damage that comes from that.
How are you determining which states are getting hit the hardest? What's sort of the methodology behind this when you're studying that data? How do you collect it?
Sure, we rely exclusively on NOAA data, which is a government agency. They've been collecting this data for over 150 years, I believe. And there's a number of different studies that also rely on that data that we will extrapolate from.
That's the National Oceanic Administration.
National Oceanic and Atmospheric.
Atmospheric Administration, exactly. Right. Yeah, so, go ahead. I think I cut you off.
No, I don't think I had anything actually meaningful to say there.
Right. And what kind of prompted that? Why is it important to kind of track this? What prompted you all at Finder.com to see that, oh, hey, we've got these hurricanes here, they're accumulating, we need to aggregate this, we need to show people? Was it kind of based on sort of concerns over the cost of these hurricanes, the types of impact that it would have on particular industries? Definitely the impact is going to have particular communities and on a personal level or a household level, but what's it suggesting as far as different industries that get hit? Like I know the insurance industry takes a big hit, for example.
They do, although they price a lot of that into their premiums. At Finder, we are a shopping comparison site, and we focus mainly on helping people find loans, insurance, credit cards, and the like. And when we're doing that, one of the things that we help people find is home insurance. You live in a coastal community, and a lot of our users live in Florida, North Carolina, and Texas.
Right.
Flood insurance and hurricane insurance is a really big deal. So helping people understand what their risk factors are, why they may be paying more in insurance, and quite frankly, seeing if we can find and uncover data to help make that insurance cheaper for them is part of our mission.
Expounding a little bit on that, John, because I'm real curious. So if you're moving into that state, are you going, or if you're already living in that state, are you going to notice that those insurance premiums are already increasing? Have they been increasing in recent years, because these hurricanes are becoming more frequent, more severe?
It really depends. So if you live in a floodplain area, sometimes it's almost impossible to get private insurance. You're going to be relying on a government-backed insurance pool. Which is tough because you don't get to choose some of your limits, you don't get to choose what it pays for in some instances and things like that. For everybody else, you certainly have seen insurance rates go up over years. Right. I don't think I've ever had one of our users come to us and be like, oh my gosh, my insurance rates just went down 5 years in a row with the same carrier.
Right.
I don't have a business based on that. We have a business based on carriers generally increase rates, and sometimes they increase rates beyond what you should be paying.
Can you, I mean, I know you look at the data and the trend lines, John. You guys are just kind of studying, okay, well, consumer trends and trends like these and the impact it will have on consumers, but any sorts of recommendations or suggestions you would have for people as they're picking insurance policies, like is it there's more high flooding because we're in climate change, more coastal flooding, especially along the East Coast, sea levels are rising. Like, for example, would you be advising people to look into flood insurance more, or look into a particular or specific type of insurance more?
I would certainly say get all the coverage that you possibly can and read the fine print. If you live in a place that's a floodplain, it is probably already very difficult for you to get any real flood insurance already. And that's been true for quite a while. But that doesn't mean you can't get other types of insurance. You can get insurance that lets you, find a rental house, for example, or something else if your own property is destroyed. It's not quite flood insurance, but read the fine print, talk to an expert, and shop around a bit, and figure out what you can get that will help you. Because if you live right on like the Chesapeake Bay, sometime in the next 10 to 15 years, your house is going to be underwater. If you're living right on the bay, like there's a pretty good chance that you're going to have some flooding and some damage from that. Same as if you live in some of the lower lying areas of Houston, Miami, like tons and tons of these areas, you know that you are very likely to have water damage. Hopefully that's all it is. Go read the fine print, or if you don't feel comfortable reading the fine print, that's why we have insurance agencies.
Hey, are you looking at, and this is really useful data, and I shared it with a number of people, and they were like, wow, okay, I kind of thought Florida would be at the top. Some people were a little bit surprised by places like Texas, and, really didn't think about, like, New York and Virginia are in that top 10 too. They weren't thinking about that. But are you looking at other aspects of this data? Like, are you going to look a little bit deeper into those numbers, looking at, like, the income levels of populations, racial demographics? Also, will you be able at some point to dissect that data according to cities and metropolitan areas? So, like, for example, we're based here in Philadelphia, but I'm noticing, like, over the next 20 years, the outlook is kind of grim as far as the flooding situation in Philadelphia. There's been a lot of flooding, but it all depends on how the city responds in terms of its stormwater management systems. Have you been looking at that data, or would you be looking at that at some point?
We would look at that data. It is pretty hard to find kind of a standardized data set on that, for sure. Hey there.
What's up, man?
On the radio, my son just walked in and then took a book and slammed the door.
That's all right.
So, what we can see is when other entities do these studies, like the Kaiser Foundation did a really good one. Well, he's right there on the radio. When the Kaiser Foundation.
What's up, man? I like the shirt. Yeah, I'm a big Star Wars geek. So, how's it going?
He lives in Philadelphia, and I'm on the radio live right now with him. You want to say hi?
You want to give us some more insights? Yeah. Hey, what's happening? All right. we are reality checks, so every now and then it becomes a reality show. There you go. Let us store a true shirt, man. You got to give me one.
It is a pretty cool set of PJs. So what they saw for Harvey, which was the second most damaging storm in terms of economic damage, was that Hispanic and Black people were hit harder because the areas hit by that storm, were predominantly Black and Hispanic areas. That we've seen something similar from Katrina, but you can't say across the board that it's always going to hit a lower income area. Sometimes that's true, sometimes it's not. Certainly the higher up you live in terms of elevation, the better off you are in terms of flooding. I mean, that's a pretty big given.
Got it.
But not all low-lying areas are equally hit by flooding. There's plenty of places with really good drainage that don't really get that badly hit. I remember I lived in New Orleans for years when I was a kid, and I lived in a higher area, but I was 2 blocks away from it, and it just got decimated every time there was a storm.
Yeah.
You'd be walking through like foot-high water all the time.
Exactly.
So it's a really, really small area difference.
That's sorry.
There was no toy in that box.
Hey, John, we're going to definitely let you go, man. We were running up on the end of the segment anyway. But no, this is real useful. Keep us posted on that data, and be real good to share that data. And I think it's important, too. People need to know especially if they're in these particular states. But we've been talking with John Brodsky. He is CEO of Finder.com. Go to Finder.com for more. So there's some real great insights and analysis. I'm sure we'll be keeping in touch with them. We're going to let them go ahead and spend some time with his kid there. So yeah, we're all in pandemia. It's so I totally understand it. All right, man. Thanks again, John, for your time. You too. Have a good one.
Thank you, Charles.
All right. We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back on the other side, we're supposed to be talking with Chris Colbert, who is professor of emergency medicine at the University of Illinois Chicago. We're going to talk about, we're going to talk about this resurgence of COVID cases, what kinds of pressures or burdens that's translating into for hospital systems. There are increasing strains on hospital systems. How are first responders responding to that, et cetera? We're going to just take a break, and we'll come back with Chris Colbert coming up next here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Internet Essentials from Comcast. High-speed home internet for low-income families for just $9.95 per month. Visit InternetEssentials.com to learn more.
Listen to Laborers Live. We created the weekend. We created the 40-hour work week. We just want enough to feed our family, be able to send our children to college, and let our next generation do better than we did.
To people that might have forgot how important unionism is in a country like the United States. People now infringing on our 8-hour workday, kind of work people more than 8 hours without overtime, kind of work people without benefits. In the long run, everybody's getting a fat paycheck except the worker. So this is really a wake-up call for America.
The struggle is continuous. Tune in to Laborers Live every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. Sponsored by LESIT, the Laborers Employers Cooperation Education Trust of the Laborers District Council of Philadelphia and vicinity.
Local 332, Sam Staten Jr. Business Manager. Local 57, Esteban Vera Business Manager. Local 135, Dan Woodall Jr. Business Manager. Local 413, James Harper Jr. Business Manager. The Laborers District Council, Ryan Boyer Business Manager, and Tony Staten, Executive Director of LESIT.
Want the latest in Word swag?
Check out the shop tab on WURDradio.com. Hoodies, tees, and more in a variety of colors. The shop tab on WURDradio.com. Show the world that you're all about black.
Talk Media.
Reality Check
with Charles Ellison.
Right now on WURD Radio
and WURDradio.com.
Reality Check
with Charles Ellison.
Right now on WURD Radio
and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. It's our Wednesday midweek edition here on WURD. We're at 96.1 FM, 900 AM in Philadelphia proper. But going beyond the Delaware Valley, Philly area, we are at WURDradio.com throughout the nation and throughout the world, also on WURD TV and WURD app as well. Joining us is Dr. Chris Colbert. He is Assistant Residency Director and Professor of Emergency Medicine at the University of Illinois in Chicago in their Department of Emergency Medicine. Also, he's the Chair of Continuing Medical Education at the American College of Osteopathic Emergency Physicians. Go to acoep.org for more information there. He joins us by Skype from Chicago here on Reality Check. Doctor, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. I appreciate the invitation. How are you doing?
All right, good. Good to have you back again, too. I think we had talked to you a while back. And, you know, unfortunately, we're looking at a resurgence in COVID infections and cases. How's that going for you? You know, because we were talking about the impact that that's having on first responders and emergency physicians and emergency staff in particular. How's that been going, you know, particularly on your side of the country, Midwest? You know, we're looking at Chicago, and what you're hearing from some of your colleagues across the nation.
Pretty much the theme that you're hearing from a lot of ER physicians just across the board in general is kind of here it comes again. We are all seeing an increase. Initially, it transitions in phases. So initially we had, in fact, the positive results. And then from the positive results, we slowly transitioned into positive results, but we were sending them home. Now they're being admitted to the hospital. And so these patients now are occupying significant beds in the hospital. It's not to the point as it was in March, where they were taking ICU beds to that large extent, nor being vented. Our management has evolved significantly, and we've learned a lot as a community of physicians. However, we're still kind of going back to those same numbers again, which is honestly very preventable.
Wow. So when do we reach that point, or when do you know when we've exceeded capacity, we've exceeded hospitalization capacity or hospital bed capacity?
So great question. This is, again, across the board. Most states have phases where you're in phase 1, phase 2, or phase 3, and it's purely by numbers. It's the positive numbers of COVID versus the relationship of bed availability. And that's, in fact, in Illinois, how we transitioned from phase 3 to phase 4 to phase 2. And so it's something that you're just mindful of. So you're looking at the numbers. All of this is clearly numbers. Positive results, admissions, bed availability.
So how are you all determining now? You're saying that, your management of this virus, of this pandemic, has evolved, right? It's still stressful. It's still burdensome. There's a lot of strains on the system. I know it's a lot of strains on you all. I'm like just thankful, grateful that you've given us a little bit of your time out of such a busy schedule to talk with us about it. But how do you all determine when a person needs to take up a bed, when they need to stay in a hospital after they've been infected with COVID? Because a lot of people have been getting, positive test results, but then they're told, hey, go back home, quarantine for 14 days and take some Tylenol. How do you determine whether or not they go home, whether or not they stay in the hospital, stay in a bed?
Great question. And in fact, that's a question that's often asked of us every shift. A lot of things to contact. Number one, comorbidities. If you're 25 positive for COVID versus 65 positive for COVID, and your vitals are key. If your heart rate is going extremely fast, tachycardia, if your oxygen level is low, and sometimes if your oxygen level is low, but you have a support group at home, we can still send you home now with certain monitoring devices. So if things go either left or right in reference to your management at home, we can call you back because we could observe that. We didn't have that in March. Comorbidities, vitals are huge, and that's what I do to base whether or not these patients are going to be admitted or going to go home.
Yeah, no, that is you. Those monitoring devices, what are those? Like, describe those, and are like those also, is that include like the family of ventilator systems, or is that separate from those monitoring devices?
So here's the thing, and this is where this kind of also goes into health equity as well. Some hospitals where I moonlight and where I work at two totally different hospitals, two totally different patient populations, and two totally different resources. Where I work at University of Illinois, we have the ability to discharge patients with oxygen monitors, so that if at any time while we discharge you home, we have someone who can monitor vitals from the hospital. And if there's any concerns, we communicate with those patients and say, hey, return back here to the hospital. There's a monitoring device. Where other hospitals that don't have that resource. And so they have to discharge patients with just good intentions and say, hey, if things get worse, return. Which is still the same advice that we give as emergency room physicians, but it's totally different when you can actually provide a patient a means of enhancing what gets worse and how to define what gets worse.
Yeah, that's fascinating because it's like that real-time data is being transmitted to you at the hospital, to you at the University of Illinois Emergency Medical Department. Some hospitals not having that kind of ability, and I think that's real important. People need to know that. And also, I mean, we're seeing in terms of the evolution of this pandemic, new innovations or just new ways of doing things. Technology that was probably already there, but now you're leveraging, like telemedicine, for example. But speak a little bit more on that, or expound more on that health equity piece, because those are, because people are concerned about that, like how that plays out. Are those hospitals that don't have that kind of capacity, don't have that kind of monitoring infrastructure? I mean, I would assume that those are the hospitals that service primarily low-income populations, Black populations, Latino populations. Is that what you're kind of seeing or what you're hearing as you're talking to your colleagues across the country?
Exactly. Just something that I say on my own. I ensure that one of the things that I make sure that I do is I work or I moonlight in an area that doesn't have the resources, and I purposely do that to be a resource for those hospitals, because I find that sometimes it's a labor of love. It's going to be a labor of love. You don't have a lot of resources. You transition from a place that has resources, and to even ask other physicians to work at other hospitals where there's not a lot of resources. A lot of people say, that's way too much work. But I think it's work that it's very well invested. And a perfect example is, so I moonlight at a hospital where it doesn't have the resources. It doesn't have a whole lot of pulmonologists. You have maybe one pulmonologist. You don't have a lot of ICU beds. So those patients, those Black and brown patients in those populations will have to wait in an emergency room significantly longer than, in fact, a hospital where you have beds available. So you'll have patients that are positive for COVID, and they're sitting in the emergency room, they're sitting in the actual room in the ED once they're diagnosed, because they're supposed to get a bed upstairs, but there are no beds available. And the beds available at these hospitals are maybe 10, as opposed to a larger hospital that has 20 beds available upstairs and 5 pulmonologists and 2 ID doctors. That's huge when it comes to management and resources. And then, so now you're challenged with definitive management access coupled with availability. So let's just say hypothetically I'm at a hospital where I'm moonlighting. We don't have the resources. So I call another hospital during the pandemic and say, hey, I've got patient X, Y, and Z that would really benefit from your resources over there. We just don't have enough here. And they'll say, hey, Dr. Corbett, we would love to take your patient. However, we don't have any beds available here either. And so that's where you get that really challenge, that reality and challenge of bed availability, why it's important to wear a mask, the importance of mitigating the transmission of this virus, because this is what happens. You have ripple effects of lack of bed availability because of COVID patients that come to the emergency room.
Yeah. Another aspect of that health piece, or that health equity piece, there was a colleague who was just telling me this recently, a researcher over at Penn, who was saying that, I know that there's a lot, he was telling me, he's like, I know there's a lot of emphasis when we talk about the loss of, for example, Black life. He's like, we typically focus in on those high profile cases involving police violence or police shooting unarmed Black civilians. He's like, but when you look at the number of people who die daily, at least based on his research, he was assessing, or he estimated that about 250 people per day die from some form of bias in the medical system. And he's like, and that's over $1 trillion in healthcare costs that we're looking at annually, just from racial bias in medical systems alone. Are you assessing that or evaluating that? If you do see it, bias from your colleagues, from your white medical colleagues, how do you respond to it? How do you manage that?
That's a great question. I can't speak to those specific numbers because I just haven't done the research and read that. However, bias exists, and it's clearly evident. Women are less likely to be taken more seriously for their chief complaint of chest pain than a man. If a woman says it's 5 out of 10 and a man says my pain is 5 out of 10, statistically, just looking at the triage notes, the 5 out of 10 communicated by a man is considered a valuable 5 and not an exaggerated 5. African Americans statistically receive less pain medication for the exact same concerns of other counterparts as well. It's just a matter of just looking at the numbers now. And so that's one thing that I think that is clearly evident with transitioning from paper charts to electronic charts and documentation. It's just a matter of pressing the buttons. You can just clearly, African Americans, chief complaint, time of medication, bam, and it just populates. So it's clear. There's significant bias, and it just needs to be addressed. And there are different policies, in fact, that are in place at many hospitals to mitigate the responsive bias as well, because that transitions into medical management by definition.
Right. We're talking, if you're just now tuning in, we're talking with Dr. Chris Colbert. He is Assistant Residency Director, and also Professor of Emergency Medicine at the University of Illinois at Chicago in the Department of Emergency Medicine. Also, he is the American College of Osteopathic Emergency Physicians Chair of Continuing Medical Education, joining us here again on Reality Check. Some real valuable insights here. And Dr. Colbert, what sort of recommendations are you giving people in terms of how they adjust for the holidays? Because people are wanting to get together. It's been a long pandemic, and they're wanting to get together and crowd up as families over Thanksgiving dinner, and then they're talking about Christmas. What sorts of advice or recommendations do you have, coming from an emergency medical professional?
I'm so glad you asked that question and give me the opportunity to give this conversation. Patients ask this all the time, or they're having college, or they're, family from college coming home. Here's the thing. It's 2020. This is a pandemic. Yeah. We're coming back to these high numbers again. Everybody wants to have that big holiday, including physicians and other medical staff at hospitals. This is not the year to do it, period. It's just not the year to do it. My recommendation is always immediate family, not to have a whole lot of people over. Realistically, are people going to do this? They're going to try. I'm confident, but then they're going to bring their family. So here's my suggestion. If you have family coming in, don't have 8 people, 10 people at one table. Divide your tables up. Have adjoining rooms and have possibly 3 to 4 people at one table. Spread individuals out. Do not house travel. Everyone does. They're at relative's house at 8 o'clock in the morning, and then they transition to another one's house at 12 o'clock, transition to another person at... Yeah. And that's a big no. That's a big no. Because doing is you're transitioning, and it's just a matter of, again, it's numbers. You have patients that are at risk. Your lower risk patients are your college students who come home for the weekend, are the 20-year-olds who can walk around with this virus, and it doesn't really have the effect that it does if you're older. But specifically on Thanksgiving and Christmas, we bring these 2 patient populations together. And most ERs literally are anticipating an increase in COVID numbers and admissions 2 weeks from Thanksgiving. Wow. Because you're going to have these 2 populations together. So again, be mindful. My recommendation is always to just keep it immediate family. If you do have a large family that comes in, separate the tables. Put in one room, put in the other, just turn the music up really loud so that everybody can enjoy it, and have a big screen TV and keep everyone as spaced as you possibly can. And honestly, I would recommend, if you're going to have people over, to wear a mask. Yeah. To wear a mask, unless you're eating. If you're going to have a whole lot of people in your home, decrease the possibility of grandmother, grandfather, uncle who has comorbidities that everybody knows has hypertension, diabetes, and sometimes takes his medication. That's the patient that's going to come to the emergency room.
We've been talking with Dr. Chris Colbert. I hope we can get you back again, Doctor. Really appreciate this information. Assistant Residency Director and Professor of Emergency Medicine at the University of Illinois at Chicago. Also Chair of Continuing Medical Education at the American College of Osteopathic Emergency Physicians. Doctor, thanks so much again. Please be safe out there. Stay healthy, and we'll talk to you again.
I appreciate the invitation. Thank you for having me. You have a wonderful day. Everyone stay safe.
All right, will do. Thank you, sir. All right, we'll talk to you soon. Okay, let's take a break, and when we come back on the other side, phone lines are open at 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Midweek Reality Check.
Buying something from a dealer just sounds a bit, well, put it like this. My cousin Ray Ray got arrested for buying something from a dealer. So why would you want to buy your car from a dealer? Hi, everybody. This is Nick inviting you to buy your next car from Jerry over at Cardex. See, they're not dealers. They're like a car concierge service. They design a car around you. Almost any make. If it's not on the lot, they'll go out and get it for you. So use my car concierge, where I've already bought 4 cars. Cardex at 116 East Glenside Avenue in Glenside, Pennsylvania. Check them out online at cardexinc.com. Or call Cardex at 215-886-3230.
Keystone First VIP Choice HMO SNP Dual Eligible Special Needs Plan has a 4 out of 5 star rating and is one of the highest rated Medicare plans in the region. Keystone First VIP Choice and you are better together. If you live in Philadelphia, Bucks, Chester, Montgomery, or Delaware County, and you have both Medicare and Medicaid, choose the Medicare plan that is working to help you get better care. Enjoy extra benefits at no cost to you with Keystone First VIP Choice. You get benefits like dental, vision, and transportation to and from your medical appointments. They also cover a fitness membership to a gym of your choice. $150 toward over-the-counter pharmacy items. There's no copay for doctor's visits. They offer a large provider network, a great prescription plan, dental coverage, and even eyeglasses. Plus, you don't have to wait for open enrollment. You can change your coverage every quarter. Keystone First VIP Choice. The name you trust, the service you deserve. Call Keystone First VIP Choice today at 1-877-686-1760 or visit KeystoneFirstVIPChoice.com.
He's back.
This is Reverend Al Sharpton.
Keeping it real with the Reverend Al Sharpton.
In times like these, we have to stay connected.
At a brand new time, Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. till midnight.
I'm excited that Keeping It Real returns to WURD.
Keeping it real with the Reverend Al Sharpton. Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. till midnight. This program is pre-recorded. No phone calls, please.
Keep it locked to WURD 96.1 FM, 900 AM. WURDradio.com.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and WordRadio.com.
All right, welcome back. We are here on our midday edition of Reality Check. It's our Wednesday edition here on the home of Black Talk Media, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WordRadio.com, and also Word app as well. Watching folks on Facebook.com/4Word. That's where you're watching us on Word TV. So we'll get to you shortly. Actually, joining us right now is Philadelphia City Council member Derek Green. For more information on him, go to phlcouncil.com/Derek Green. Also newly elected as president of the Pennsylvania Municipal League. Wanted to talk to him a little bit about that this morning here on Reality Check. Councilman, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. I think the title of your show is more important than ever. There are certain people in this nation that need a reality check.
Oh, they do.
I'll just leave that at that.
Yeah, we know who they are now.
Especially on the person that lives at Black Lives Matter Plaza in the District of Columbia on Pennsylvania Avenue.
That's right. And we, I'm just referencing or paraphrasing one of our contributors from yesterday, Mike Green. He was like, "We know who they are now." we know, we know who those folks are. Pennsylvania Municipal League. So you had been on the board of directors for quite some time, since 2018. You were just elected as president. But a lot of folks might not know what the Pennsylvania Municipal League is and why it's so relevant to Philly. Talk about that.
Well, the Pennsylvania Municipal League is an organization that's also connected to the